Good evening. If you are having trouble finding a seat, there's a few seats up front. And if you're not having trouble finding a seat, you're probably not here. Thank you for coming to Soul Food Poetry Night. I'm Michael Dillon Welch, and with Tanya McDonald, we're happy to welcome our featured readers tonight. And I just realized I forgot your bios. I picked up one sheet, but not the other sheet. Give me a sec. Do you guys want the music stand for your poetry? Okay, I'll set that up. Actually, I'd like to begin with an excerpt from a poem called Ars Poetica, which a lot of poets write. This is by George Amabile, who's an American who's lived in Canada for many years. I think he was a draft dodger. And this is the excerpt that I'd like to read. Robert Frost, I tell you, it's harder to play tennis with the net down. You have to use your whole mind. You have to love the soul of the game more than personal glory. That's the excerpt. So our two readers tonight are Rick Clark and Douglas Cole. And I'll read you both of their bios, and then Rick will read, and then Douglas will have his turn. Rick is an English instructor at Seattle Central Community College, and as a freelance writer and poet, and editor of Correlations, newsletter of the Rose Alley Press Anthology of Northwest Poets. And that is how we met. When was that reading? 2 years ago? Okay, we were both at the same reading for that anthology at Hugo House. And I thought, well, we just have to have Rick come to Soul Food sometime. And there was somebody else who read, Susan Casey who read, and I was thinking the same thing. You read some haiku too. And she was scheduled to read with you, and then you couldn't make it, and now we've rescheduled, and now finally you're here. So I'm glad we've made that happen. It's been a year and a half or two, but now it's happening. And our other reader is Douglas Cole, who has a bachelor's degree in literature from San Diego State University and a master's in creative writing from Western Washington. He teaches also at Seattle Central Community College, and some of his work appears in the Connecticut River Review, Louisiana Literature, Cumberland Poetry Review, and Midwest Quarterly. He has work available online in the Adirondack Review, Salt River Review, Avatar Review, and recorded a story for Bound Off. What's Bound Off? The Open Ward, a Best of Poetry Award from Clapboard House, and first prize in the Picture Worth 500 Words Poetry Contest run by Tattoo Highway. So, we are now going to hear some poems with the net down, I think. So please welcome Rick Clark.
Good evening. Thank you for being here. The problem with reading glasses is that they're great for looking at things close, but if they're in the way when I'm looking at you, you're a blur. So I'm going to really have to look like this sort of old guy. question of beaks. Earth Day 2011, Ocean Shores, Washington. Why the slight down curve in the beak of the whimbrel, who feeds along the shore beside its cousin, the curlew, whose beak curves slightly up? What different meals of shrimp or sandworms must each pluck up from deep in muck with such dissimilar bills? Are the two birds' tastes so different, so completely different, they have to have such counter-curving beaks, even as they breakfast wing by wing? One can't help but ask, can two birds with such diverse proboscides relate? Or are they even aware that one another exists? Fran, in particular, is an avid gardener. We have a lovely garden out there by the ocean, generally beat by wind and rain and salt. But this poem will point to probably the worst of all nemeses. Demon deer. To the delicate-hearted, the fastidious primper of roses, the ardent exclaimer of hydrangeas, the tender deer is a demon. Up go the wooden and wire fences, the nostril-flaring stenches and tongue-burning sauces sprinkled over our bushes. The Japanese deer scare clacks when it overbalances with water, startling the dozing conscience of the guilty grazing presence. Once the sweetest, highest creature in the pecking order, the dewy-eyed garden deer falls to the level of slug and mole, or the mosquito, the once enlightened, smacks without remorse against soft skin. In the little wars we wage in small backyards, love for the fragile flower makes life hard. This poem was recently published in Spindrift, which is the literary journal of Shoreline Community College. It's called Crabapple Tree. Beyond the golden opportunity tarnished by jadedness, beyond the comforting squabble that is the great chicken coop of the world, you stand like a testament to pure, unadulterated existence, not as simple as the stone at your feet, nor as complex as the crow who topples reaching with her beak for one of your tiny, overripe apples. I could cut you down, cut you up into firewood. I could shape you into an image I have in mind. Yet you expect nothing of me. You take everything I do to you with chainsaw and loppers, and yet you do not move, while I need endure nothing of you except your incremental growth. I make metaphors of your crusty bark. I turn you into symbols, into syllables. I go so far as to abandon myself spiritually to your grace, yet there you stand, rooted so profoundly I can't imagine such rootedness. My body is so insane to move, and only for a moment can I follow your example, and only superficially at that. I might imagine, I might be so vain, so egocentric as to believe you love me in some inhuman way, but I already take so much from your stillness and strength, from the slow flow of your colors through the seasons, that I do my best not to turn you into a man. Grateful that if you cannot love, then you cannot hate me. I'm glad that Michael mentioned Ars Poetica, which essentially is art about art, or in this case, poetry about poetry. And I've written this one and have not aired it yet, so I'm kind of excited to share it with you. It's called Creation Myth. I'm familiar with creation myths because I teach ancient literature now and then at the college, and we look at creation myths, first of all, for the first week or two, from all over the world. This is a special, sort of personal creation myth. When awe split down the middle, some went over to fear and some wonder. When greed split off from fear, fear built fortresses with greed, while greed set out into the wilderness seeking gold and slaves. It was the wanderers who sought to make sense of the world. Some became artists, others scientists. And of the tribe of artists, some drew swords of truth in the face of a dying world, while others painted the innocent world with love. Meanwhile, the poets of love opened eyes into the human heart, while the poets of wonder go about blinded still by awe's first light. And this is the official soul food poem. I had to fish around extensively to find something I thought might pass muster. It's called Poetic Fish. I'd rather write a poem I really like far up the river than catch and haul home a magnificent trout for dinner if I have to choose. Few can understand this other kind of fishing you can do without a fishing rod. You can do it even without a pen, if for you the world's a stream of which you deeply swim, and if your memory's hooked. Odd how sometimes it's the biggest, most beautiful fish of a poem that I'm least likely to hold up for a photo or hand over for public consumption. Maybe it was just a lucky catch. Maybe I made a fool of myself fighting too hard for it. Maybe I worry no one will be hungry for such a figurative fish. How big a real fish will I catch between the long casts of my line for a poem this mellifluous summer afternoon? More Ars Poetica. Mad enough to write. I'm mad enough to write and never look back. Like the troop escaped from the asylum and King of Hearts, happy to play at life all day. I lay down words, keep laying down words, on and on I scribble, mad to hear them chime, to mystify myself with what I hope is beauty. Truth I give up on, for every word leads me away from reality, away from planet Earth and sun and moon and undeniable stone, this blood-thick heart. But the words themselves are sound in ink, the mind's tongue inscribed, their own little world, their own little journey from a distant here to a distant there. It's a train I don't want to miss, a train I can't get off. I love the sounds of words, how an engine puffs and wheels clack and screech late into a nowhere night. Writing down words, wacky and whimsical, dangerous and deadly, mad as I can get away with, I wouldn't want to miss any word or line or wild idea that winds its way up on paper with or without me. And I'll dedicate this to Michael and his daughter, Sarah. Inspiration and helplessness. Sometimes I can barely read even the most enticingly beautiful poem, for even the first few words make me want so much to write what I feel when I read them that I cannot move. I trap myself between inspiration and helplessness, between compulsion and the mad stone wall of truth's relentless beauty. I read a word, pick up my pen, and there I hover like a torn butterfly between the first bright flowers of spring and our one and only sun. Doug and I both teach English at Seattle Central Community College, so I thought I would write one poem in that vein. I'd read one poem in that vein. It's called Office Hours. They come in one after another with big calf tears in their eyes, disarming sheepish grins with the best of excuses. My best friend was killed in a boating accident. I'm bipolar, depressed, I have social anxiety. The drugs they give me make me sleepy. How many grandparents have died in my office? How many headstones stand invisibly beside my desk? My cat got sick all over my new white carpet. I'm sleeping on the sofa of a friend. I have to go to a game. Some turn glib, some shatter like glass, some tell endless life stories, down to buying a pair of socks, their favorite talk show host, their favorite soap. Some I have to draw out like a tapeworm with a bowl of hot beef stew. Some bow, wheedle, cajole, flirt. Some want advice to be writers or poets. Having hardly written a word, I sit with my thumb holding up my chin, listen like a father, a mother, an uncle or a grandfather, a best friend or dog. My eyes pinned to the backs of their skulls, hoping I'll change their lives. I'll get one to write like Toni Morrison, like Raymond Carver, Edgar Allan Poe, or Sylvia Plath. So many try. Hoping to make a difference, to bring silence to the crypt, to muffle the stuttering sphinx, to bring Polyphemus to his knees, babbling like a baby on his cave stone floor, so I can breathe freely, so I can sleep at night, knowing I've earned my meager loaf of psychic bread. Well, I'm a little nervous about this. I attempt to write haiku most every day of my life, at least in the last, I don't know how long. So I'm going to read a few. And a friend, a good acquaintance of friends of mine died recently, so I've included some, I guess, a death haiku. I'm going to take care of that business with haiku. I have 42 other death poems in a manuscript somewhere. I'll start out with the heavy ones and end up with the light ones. 10 haiku. Finds a tooth where he spread his mother's ashes to be a bit of quartz. The gnat saved from the pestle oil, dying anyway. Please, raccoon, look both ways before crossing this road. Our old cat turning round 4 times before curling up into a ball. Blue, blind eyes, the garter snake about to molt. I think of Tiresias. Counting the ticks of the wall clock, a goofy melody emerges. The morning carpenter can't saw with his pencil nor draw with his saw. Went to put on her pajamas, realizing she'd never gone out of them. The homeless man fixing a bicycle chain for the helpless tourists. Shining flatly against a sheer black sky. The moon isn't real. And this is a poem I wrote for my wife, a love poem. She's a yoga teacher. I want to be your yoga gigolo. For Fran. I want to be your yoga gigolo, your downward facing dog, your sticky mat partner, your cat and cow man. I want to be your demonstration model, your stick figure diagram, your striking cobra, your kundalini serpent, your warrior 1, 2, and 3, your head and handstand man. I want to be your cooing pigeon, your uninhibited roaring lion, your quivering unstrung arrow, your deep breathing man, your crow, your crane, your sleepy lily pad frog, your ever unfolding lotus, the lord of your dance. I want you to adjust me and adjust me again, to set me straight in your entangling asana. I want to open your chakras as you open mine. I want to be the sun in your salutation, the moon in your repose, the flame in your meditation. I want to be your yoga gigolo, to see the fire in me, in you, and the light in you, in me. This is a poem that's to be included in an anthology that's coming out on 12/12/12 called The Poetry of Yoga. Second volume. The first one came out on 11/11/11. Pardon? That's the point. I like to read this poem because, well, how many of you feel lucky? At least sometimes? Okay, about half the hands went up. I guess the rest of you never feel lucky. Well, I feel lucky very often. And that's what this is about. It's called Lucky Frog. Frog, I see you hop across the freeway in a rainstorm as I speed by. Water blasting out of wheel ruts, juggernauts of tires bearing down, cars like hydroplanes, freighters like mountains flying by. Under 100 wheels, and mine. You hop and do not stop. You do not dodge or turn around or give a thought to being crushed and turned to mush. In my rear view mirror, I see you make it to the other side. You lucky, lucky frog, the whole wide world, your slippery bog. Well, I'm going to read one more, and it's completely different. Over the last year, I spearheaded a Row to Canada Lou Gehrig disease fundraiser. We built 3 beautiful dories from kits. We did everything. We did publicity, we did the fundraising, we absolutely did everything to make it a successful fundraiser. And then we rode from Canada from August 1st to August 11th. We succeeded in reaching the border from Case Inlet, Vaughan Bay Spit. And it was quite a row. There were lots of blisters and sore muscles, but it was a great success and a great adventure. And I wrote this ballad because my sister, who is a musician and has a band, said, you need to write a ballad about this, so I wrote a ballad. And it's called Ballad of Rowing, and it is for Smitty, my old high school buddy who died of ALS about 3 years ago. Ballad of Rowing for Smitty. Vietnam was raging red. The Beatles took a final bow. The Palestinians hijacked planes. The cops shot students dead. 1970. The past was slowly sliding south while the unknown loomed to north. We took each stroke, a stroke at a time. Rowing north, it was no crime. Young men burned their 1A cards. They crossed the border to Canada. Too many signed their lives away and ended up in Cambodia. The past was sliding slowly south while the unknown loomed to north. We took each stroke, a stroke at a time, rowing north. It was no crime. So we pushed off from the pebbly shore just 2 weeks after we'd done with school, with little more than our sleeping bags and pipes and fishing rods in store. The past was sliding slowly south while the unknown loomed to north. We took each stroke, a stroke at a time, rowing north. It was no crime. We hauled back hard on our dories' oars. We ate from the sea and slept where we moored. Oh, we slept like we'd never slept before. All we dreamed of was pulling oars. The past was sliding slowly south while the unknown loomed to north. We took each stroke, a stroke at a time, rowing north. It was no crime. We hauled back hard on our dories' oars. We waved at every boat we passed. We lapped up every glint of wave. We laughed like mad at an all-night storm. The past was sliding slowly south while the unknown loomed to north. We took each stroke, a stroke at a time, rowing north. It was no crime. So when we spotted Canada, our muscles turning to living rock, our hearts were hewn by the rocking sea, and we whooped, singing free. When we spotted Canada, our muscles turning to living rock, our hearts were hewn by the rocking sea, and we whooped, singing free. The past was sliding slowly south, while the unknown loomed to north. We took each stroke a stroke at a time. Rowing north, it was no crime. I should mention that the rowing trip that we did was a recreation of the rowing trip that me and Smitty did in 1970, right after we graduated from high school, with a very nice antique rowboat that some nice, kind soul loaned us. So it was good to have had that adventure with him. So thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Doug, and thank you all for being here, and thank you for having me here to read. This is a special place, and I have good memories of being here, actually. I've been on this stage playing music at a few of the open mics that they have here. They have so many wonderful events here, like the musical events, the open mics, and featured musical artists as well, and drum circles, and tarot readings, and lectures, and just such a wonderful space. And it's such a wonderful space for me to be here and to read too. So thank you. Thank you, Clint and Sarah, who run this beautiful space as well. Um, I don't know how many of you have ever seen the movie Dances with Wolves. The woman who played the lead opposite Kevin Costner, I don't remember her name, Mary McCartney or McCarthy or something like that. I can't remember. I once saw her in a QFC. She was buying a six-pack of Mickey's Wide Mouth, and so that was the beginning of a short journey, and inspired a couple of these other poems that I'm going to read. A couple of short poems I'm going to read that were similar kinds of events. The first one here is called "The Famous and the Dead." I saw the tennis star in a convenience store up on Lake City Way. I knew him by his famous hair. When I got home, I told my woman, and she said, "No way. What would he be doing in a convenience store on Lake City Way?" "I don't know," I said, "just cruising along, visiting a friend, shopping for a drink." "No way," she said. "You always think you see famous people." "I don't really always see famous people." But I said, "Come on, it's not so strange. You don't think famous people shop in stores and eat in restaurants?" "Whatever," she said. She didn't want to believe me. But it's not so strange if you think about it. The dead are everywhere, so why not the famous? All right. And this one's called Actress. It's not about her, it's about a different one. Oh, can you guess who the first one was? Tennis star, famous hair. Close. That's it. This one's called Actress. The actress appeared in a crowd at the airport. I knew who she was before I knew who she was. Wearing dark star glasses, walking along with a lookout friend. But she had the buffer on, so no one was approaching her, just glancing and looking. This was New York, after all, her world, or one of her worlds, because the whole world was her world, and she had the look of someone coming back from an expensive resort, and she was looking around in her subtle way, looking for someone more famous than she was, but it was just us and the rest of the ghosts that mostly go unnoticed. All right. My girlfriend and I, our family, we recently got a dog, and I wanted to name him Buddha, kind of as a joke, right? Because there's that cone, does a dog have Buddha nature? It's story dog. The monk gets hit for asking the question because it's a stupid question, right? Doesn't the dog have Buddha nature? Right. Anyway, so that sort of inspired this poem. So you have to look for it. It's like a little test. All right. And this one's called Like I Know Something About Crows. There was a big commotion going on up the block. People were gathered around a tree, and the crows were squawking and flying around. So I wandered up there, and I saw a crow on the ground, and someone was saying, "We got to help the baby crow. We got to do something about the baby crow." And they were all standing around with this crow on the ground. Its speak open in that red tongue. "I think he fell out of that nest up there," another one said. "We have to do something." So I went and got a ladder out of my garage. I had a ladder then and a garage. And I came back out and put the ladder up against the tree and chased down that crow. I just nabbed him up and climbed up the ladder, and I could feel his little heart beating fast, and I was hoping he wouldn't puke or shit on me or have a heart attack. And I could see the nest, but I couldn't quite reach it, so I put